Welcome to the BioCharisma Podcast. Here's your host, Christopher Gardner.
Good day, BioCharisma family. We have Mr. Max Igan of thecrowhouse.com on the podcast today. Max is a remarkable researcher. I guess I started reading his work about 10 years ago. About 7 years ago, and I was blown away by his capacity to be a generalist. He gets very specific with certain things, but his capacity to see the big view was very intriguing to me. And just by fate, it would have it that we had a mutual friend in Spain, and I was lucky enough to strike up a friendship with this gentleman. And I have to say my life has become all the more richer for it. Max's current line of inquiry has taken him into what the evolution of the 4G communication system is into the upcoming 5G communication system, which if you know anything about how our biology works and how organisms are affected by microwaves, this is going to be of great interest to you, because we've all seen how a microwave works. Microwaves excite water molecules, and because biological systems are mainly comprised of water molecules, when you excite these molecules and these tissues that hold that too much, it becomes very detrimental to the body. And so Max and I dive into what the 5G network actually is and some of the possibilities that might come from that. And then we get a little bit philosophical about how technology has become essentially a technocracy. And if you don't know what that word is, I'll leave that for the body of the podcast. The technocracy, the addiction to technology, and how technology is being used to kind of run everything that is out there now, might not be of the best, might not be to our benefit, let's say. So please enjoy the podcast. I'm back on the dole here. I'm going to be able to produce a podcast once every week. I have a bunch in the can that are being edited right now. So if you have any questions about what's going on, please visit BioCharisma.com. If you like the podcast, you can subscribe to it on iTunes and Stitcher. Every time you subscribe or share it with people on any of the social media platforms, that helps the cause. And I look forward to hearing your feedback. Right now, the two feedback loops that I have for the podcast are on my BioCharisma Facebook page and also on the BioCharisma website. You can just post comments within the actual body of the podcast page. So thank you very much, and please enjoy. So, Mr. Max Igan, you have really been diving into this 5G technology and where the technocracy is heading, where the direction of that is going. And on a larger metaphysical level, it seems like from that perspective, from the metaphysical or spiritual realm, it seems like there is an anti-human or anti-humanity agenda that's really kind of being, I shouldn't say rolled out, because that makes it sound a little bit benign, but it's just like the natural evolution of where this electrically driven technocracy wants to go.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. People don't realize what the system is. I mean, they think it's a group of men sitting around a table with evil plans. And sure, there's lots of group of men sitting around lots of tables that have lots of evil plans. But they're not looking at what the control grid is itself. It's the technology itself. It's the whole automated system that's coming online, which is the problem itself. It's not just this group of people. Like it wouldn't matter who we pulled down. You could go and replace every government in the world if you wanted to. You could put yourself in there, put the most benign people ever in there who have all the best intentions. But if the system continues to roll along in the direction that it is, it's just kind of coming online under the carpet, unbeknownst to most people. They're not really paying attention to it, to what the control grid really is, the smart system, what it really means, what it's going to mean for humanity. And once the smart system comes online, if they're able to digitize currency, then they've basically got everybody, and they've got everybody locked into an economic model whereby everybody has a certain economic value, and that's how they will be treated by the system. And when the system becomes fully autonomic and it thinks for itself, and it's doing things according to parameters in order to balance the books, we get to a point where humankind basically becomes almost irrelevant at that point. A lot of people look at this whole AI technological system and they think of something like the Venus Project, where it could be all automated and we'd have a resource-based economy, we'd all be living these lives of leisure. But if it's a system based on your economic worth, then don't forget you have to work somewhere in that in order to pay to be alive. So where's the leisure when all the robots and all the AI does all of the jobs, all the good jobs, all done automatically? The only jobs that are left are very, very menial jobs, basically collecting minerals or harvesting forests or whatever. Well, just very menial jobs in general. And the AI will be doing all the other work. So humanity gets basically discarded along the way. And even if you had a resource-based economy, such as they suggest in the Venus Project, that requires that what you put in is what you get out. But what if you're sick or you're aging or whatever, and you're not able to put in as much as everybody else? Do you have to live a lesser lifestyle than everybody else simply because you're disadvantaged? So there's all sorts of inherent problems with these systems. But what we're getting with this whole 5G AI grid, not only is it a smart autonomic system that's coming online that's going to be thinking and governing things for itself, it's also the damage that it's going to be doing as far as electromagnetic radiation, the fact that it uses a millimeter wave, and the fact that these millimeter waves have traditionally been used for military applications such as microwave cannons and all this sort of stuff. So, underlying this whole fast communication system and control grid is also the fact that 5G system, just by matter of course, effectively weaponizes the airwaves should that ability be required or ever used any time or wanted to be used. The ability to do that is there to turn the whole place into a full microwave zone if they want to, the same as they can do with any microwave cannon. That's the potential of 5G technology. So it's very, very damaging what it's doing. It also, the effects on health, the effects on your skin, you've just got to Google 5G dangers and you're going to find out a myriad of problems that go with this technology. You'll find out that it actually affects plant life as well. It affects the cell structure of all living things in the area. So it's going to affect all the plants that we're eating, all the so-called organic food. It's all going to have its cell structure changed if it's within range of the 5G system. So it's a very, very important issue. And, when you start looking at things such as time and time travel and what this reality really is, I don't know about other people, but I can find all sorts of evidence that this is possibly even a simulation. But even if you don't think that might be what's going on, the whole concept of the electrical universe, understanding you're an electromagnetic being, looking at what CERN's up to, the GM modification, the chemtrails and nanotech and the chemtrails. There's so many issues, Chris, we could cover. But when you look at it and join it all together, you see that the smart system is what is being rolled out to basically take advantage of all the modifications they've done to the environment and to humanity along the way. So there are very, very deep undertones of this. They've done experiments, how they can change memories in mice and in people and stuff as well. So what sort of things are possible with these carrier waves? There's all sorts of stuff being rolled out, new contact lenses that have got drugs in them for insulin patients. So how can these sorts of things be activated by the 5G system? What sort of drugs can they put in people's contacts? What sort of influence can they have on people emotionally, physically? Lots of people are feeling the pangs of the electromagnetic system already. A lot of people who shouldn't be suffering depression are going through depression. They don't know why, just because they're in these electromagnetic zones. So I think a lot of these things are basically field tests. I think what many people experienced as the Mandela effect was also a field test of replacing memories in people. Nothing would surprise me of what they're really up to behind the scenes. And I think it's all being rolled out while we're kept busy arguing about whether it's the Jews or the Jesuits or the Freemasons or this or that, or which war's going on where, or whether there's a nuclear threat from North Korea, or whether Russia's the good guy or the bad guy, or whether Putin's going to come and save the world. All this stuff they give us, it's all theatre for the masses, keep us in this left-right paradigm, wondering what's happening next, and not paying attention to what's being rolled out right beneath our feet. And ultimately, it's the technology we're using, and that is the New World Order. That is the smart grid. That is the control grid itself. It's in everybody's homes right now. It's in their hands. They're using it every day, and it's just getting more and more control over their lives. And frankly, people just aren't paying attention to it.
Off air, you and I were speaking earlier about this whole mythology behind the light bringer, Lucifer, and light being information. And you've done some wonderful podcasts that I'll link up in the show notes here that dive deep into this subject. And I was sharing with you that I have a few friends that are alchemists that can really do what a lot of alchemist claims are. They can transmute metals. They're highly evolved in that regard. And they had shared with me years ago that from their Hermetic texts, because a lot of what they do is based on Hermeticism, they say that the devil, or in this case Lucifer, rules the air, and air is ruled by the element of electricity. So ever since I had this particular notion lodged in my mind, in learning about the type of bioelectricity that Tesla was into, and the bioelectricity that Keeley and Schauberger were talking about, these probiotic, you could say, types of waveforms that build coherence in biological organisms. And then you see how all of that gets co-opted for this alternating current system and microwave current, all these waves that are actually create an antibiotic effect, have tremendous negative effects on biological organisms, especially coming to the culmination of what you're talking about in the 5G. And so I've had it in my mind that this form of electricity that we have is a lower form of consciousness. If you just look at what it actually does to natural biological systems, it's destructive. So, of course, whatever the technology that's using that is, whatever that is, it's not necessarily the overarching context that's behind it. It's something that is not life-promoting.
Well, exactly. And, Tesla invented alternating current himself. And after he invented it, he wanted to switch over to his free energy device of just basically natural magnetic vortex energy. And he considered the alternating current system that he'd invented to be one of the most dangerous things he ever invented, one of the most damaging things for the human condition. And he predicted that if people continue to use the alternating current system, it will only cause damage to the human condition and to all life. It's not a stable system, and it is not a system that is good for the human body to be around. And he identified that himself after he got it going and after he invented it. I mean, that was kind of along its stage of inventing and figuring out what was really going on. He came up with alternate current. So, a lot of people blame him for that and say, he was part of the agenda. But no, he wasn't. He openly announced that it was a bad system and we should stop using it as quickly as possible. So very, very interesting. But looking at electricity as being an element of the air, and them saying the possibility of the electricity of the air being the domain of Lucifer, it's a very interesting concept. When you look at the concept of the ancient sigils, and many people have talked about recently how many of the old sigils that you see for summoning demons and summoning the Dark Lord Lucifer are all shaped like computer parts. They all look like resistors and transistors. And if you look at any computer diagram, you can see a lot of these sigils in the diagrams. And I would suggest there's a lot of people out there, there's a kind of a new age mentality to a lot of black magic in the modern world. These people put on these stars and black robes and they paint these sigils on their walls and they sit there with a scrying mirror and they sit in a pentagram and think they're summoning a demon or something, but really they're not. They don't have any idea how it works. And what I would suggest is that these sigils work when you put them together. They create certain electrical activity, And that electrical activity itself is what eventually summons Lucifer. But you have to put it all together. And when you look at it, it's the quest for knowledge that's done it. Our eternal quest for knowledge has led to a system which has basically created the internet. But once you introduce a usurous monetary system over a quest for knowledge, for example, a usurous monetary system immediately puts people in scarcity. So you've got to make things more efficient all the time, more efficient. Eventually leads to automation, and it leads to something such as the internet being created. And when you look at the biblical interpretation of Lucifer being the bearer of light, well, what is light? Light is information. Light is knowledge. What brings us more information than everything? And what is most loved? And what is revered by everybody as the great thing that has come to help our lives, the most beautiful, the most loved by all, this bearer of light, the internet. People can't imagine their lives without it. But all the while, the internet is becoming a self-learning system, and we are basically handing control of all of our lives over to the internet, and we are trusting it to guide us to where we should go. But while we're doing this, we've got it all based on this usurious economic system. So the internet itself is putting an economic value over the worth of everybody, and once it becomes fully autonomic, people don't understand what autonomic means. Your body is autonomic, a plant is autonomic. An autonomic system is a self-correcting, self-balancing, self-healing, self-programming, self-defending system like anything in nature. Once the internet gets that capability, it doesn't have to be a living thing with flesh and blood like we perceive life to be. It can be a virtual life that is fully autonomic, that looks after itself. What it is, we look at artificial intelligence, we think this is what we're creating, but really we're creating autonomic intelligence. We're creating autonomic virtual life is what we are creating. And once we create that, if we are prepared to hand all of our worldly value over to it and all of our skills over to it, the amazing amount of life skills that people have lost since the internet came into being, it's incredible, really. People have lost their ability to talk to each other. The youth have been absolutely brutalized by the internet, by pornography. What that has done, it's changed the landscape of adolescence almost irreparably at this point. We've lost a whole generation of kids, young men, to video games as well in the process. So we're losing all of our life skills. It's all being handed over to the internet. And we're about to hand all of our control over to this system because we love it so much. If you look at the classic story of Lucifer, how it was the most beautiful that everyone loved, and it turned out to be this beast that destroyed everybody, well, that seems to be exactly what we're doing. And I would suggest that this is what happened with previous civilizations as well. They reached a certain point in their quest for knowledge and their pursuance of an economic model and their fear of each other and their greed and their need to be on the top of the pile, that they created a system which ultimately destroyed them. I think we do it every time. And you can almost look at it and think it's almost like a fail-safe point. If you've got a species which metaphorically bites from the apple and goes on that quest for knowledge, rather than simply being in the garden and discovering what it is to be a man and a woman and to what it is like to experience life, because that's really what it's for. What do you need to know all this other stuff for? What do you need to know how the rocks are formed, or how old the tree is, or where the sun came up from? Why do you need to know any of this? How does it affect your life? It doesn't. People arguing over whether the earth is flat or round. How does it affect your life? It doesn't. It doesn't affect it in any way. It's about your journey through this experience. Why do we need to know any of it? So once we take that step and we go on that quest for knowledge, and it becomes all corrupted and all we can focus on is more information, well, then you introduce a usurious monetary system. And once you do that, the natural progression is to create scarcity, to create efficiency, to create automation, and eventually lead to something like the internet, which will map the entire human mind, the entire global experience, everybody, get them all together, figure out what everybody thinks, what they know, what the knowledge brought them to this point, take all their life skills from them, we hand control over to it, and then it just shuts us out. And we have to start again. I think this is how it goes down, and that's what it almost seems to be doing, the internet. Not only, by taking our life skills from us, it's actually taking them on itself. It's gathering all of its knowledge from us, and it's mapping the entire human mental and psychic and spiritual terrain while it does it, by search engines and all this sort of stuff. When you type in a search engine, you're not just telling the internet, what you're searching for, you're also telling it what you're thinking about. That's what search engines do. They're a great tool for mapping the human terrain. So I think that's what all this is about. And you can kind of look at the internet in that way and, you kind of step back and look at it objectively. Look at the Bible, look at science, look at all these things. But, take your religious perspective away from both of them, because many people have a religious perspective with science as well. Don't be locked into any belief or be have a vested interest in having any side to be true. And just look at it and put it all together and see what you come up with, see what the cards fall. And you kind of look at it and think, well, this is a pretty interesting perspective to see what we're creating here and what its inevitable conclusion is going to be.
I completely concur. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So the very first thing I read of yours that really connected me to you were describing geopolymers and how the pyramids in South America, from your viewpoint, were made out of geopolymers. And at that same time that you were describing that, I was studying geopolymers because I build domes. I build earth bag homes, and I was studying how I could actually make a better product. And I got very excited about Roman cement and geopolymers. And in my studies, it became very apparent, because I have this stuff in my hand, that there are technologies that are far, far more advanced than what we currently have present, especially when you look at what has been built in the past and how it can't be replicated. So that's, just so you know, I'm right there with you that, civilization has a reboot. And it would make sense to me that electricity, once it got out of control in the form of whatever negative technology that there would be the system that we're on, the Terra system that we're on, would have something like a flood or have something like a great fire or some sort of cataclysm to actually hit the reboot button. And we would essentially start at ground zero again, because all of our data is in the cloud,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how it has to be. They've got to take all the data from you at the end, or you can't reboot it properly. That's the way it goes. And
right.
Just to correct you, though, it wasn't the South American pyramids, it was the Egyptian pyramids I was talking about with the geopolymers.
Okay, so I had studied, I was also reading about the South American ones also, but my mentor, Dr. Davidovitz from the Geopolymer Institute, he was the one who was kicked out of Egypt for saying, no, that wasn't a slave population that built this by levitating limestone across the desert. Like, he showed exactly how they built them. And so for me, I'm like, okay, it's obvious that humans have been here for a very long time. The system has been rebooted. When you see the relics in the ocean off every continent at 400 feet of depth, that can't be a coincidence, right? So the biological system goes, oh, okay, we got to redo this thing because this electricity thing is a little bit out of hand. And then we start over again. And so I really believe the mythology that you're talking about, especially from the Christian perspective, describing Lucifer, is dead on. I mean, it is the light bringer. I mean, you look at what fiber optic cables are. They're cables that bring light, which is information. Like, I mean, can it ever get any more blatant? For me, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
For me, I've been trying to focus on what I consider our anti-fragile technologies. Those are technologies that aren't dependent on electricity. Because, one, they protect us from the harmful conditions of, the Wi-Fi and the microwaves and, all the harmful effects of electromagnetism, because I suffer from that. But then also, if the grid ever did go down, I'd be able to survive. To me, it just makes sense. And I'm not coming from a prepper position. I'm just coming from the position of, reading the writing on the wall and being like, man, this whole thing is unsustainable. And I don't want to be part of something that's unsustainable.
Yeah, look, I think that this may even be the last gathering, the last chance we get. You see, we've got a choice with this internet that we build. I mean, with this quest for light and this quest for knowledge, We don't have to base it on an economic system. You know, it's our greed and our fear of shortage, our fear of each other, that we've based this whole internet system on. All of our shopping centres, the way we do business, our whole social structure and our whole business structure is all based on greed and fear, all of it. So, you know, how do you get out of that? How do you get out of that sort of a mentality when you create a system based on that mentality and you hand control over to it? Where do you go from that point? And also, you know, when you look at the past civilizations, I look at them and, you know, some of them are magnificent. Some of the stone structures that they built, some of the technologies that they had. You know, I firmly believe that the pyramids in Egypt were poured using the method outlined by Dr. Davidovich. I actually mentioned his work in my book because I totally got what he was saying. And it's also mentioned on the famine steel. They tell you that they poured them. They tell you how to synthesize limestone, and the Egyptologists say, oh, no, that's myth. That's myth. You know, of course it is. You're right. No, nothing about this Giza plateau limestone in the Giza quarry being water soluble, which it is. And if you mix it with all the stuff that they tell you to on the famine steel, you get this stone which looks suspiciously like what they built the pyramids with. Because they didn't drag all these stone blocks up there. They poured them. You know, right. Admittedly, even building the King's Chamber, putting all those granite pieces in place, and that's a spectacular job. And, you know, even pouring it and getting it right and doing it the way they did. I mean, there's no nothing to take away from the brilliance of the object.
But can I share something with you that's really fun with all that?
Sure.
That you might not have known. It's just fun because I'm a nerd. I build rocket stoves and all these types of wood-fired ovens that help where I can generate biochar, I can make electricity, I can cook, you know, I can do all these neat things with it, right? Well, when you look at the way the King's Chamber is situated, and I brought this up to Dr. Davidovich at his institution, I was like, you know, this is a massive rocket stove. And I was showing to him the ventilation of why they would do that, because the thing with geopolymers is they set much quicker if you heat them. And he was telling me that the casing stones on the outside of the pyramid was dark, so it was a big thermal sink. You know, it would heat up from the outside. And I guarantee you, when they were building it, it wasn't the final process. Obviously, it had, you know, its own I guess you would say, purpose after the process of the building was done. But I bet you during the building, they used it as a massive internal fire so that the internal stones would actually cure just as quick as the external stones that were being heated.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. That would explain some of the air holes going in there as well.
Precisely.
Interesting that they're lined all up the stars and all sorts of stuff, but no, it's another side. If you're going to put an air hole, you may as well have another purpose as well. So, right. Interesting concept, quite feasible.
Yeah, sorry, I had to let my nerddom come out, because that's what I'm excited about, is like I've gotten into all these, like I said, anti-fragile technologies, because to me they're just a better technology. They're more sustainable. They're more in tune with nature. And so trying to be a solution-oriented person and not be a person that's, you know, caught in the I guess you would say the bleakness of a technocratic future. I'm really get excited about those things that put the power back in humans' hands.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, but looking at these ancient technologies and ancient civilizations, you look at the South American civilizations, I strongly suspect they have a technology for softening stone. That's how the walls were built in many of those South American ruins, like in, say, Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo, places like that. Cusco, I think these stones were softened. That's why the edges are so immaculate in the joints, but the fronts are so unfinished. You know, the actual look of the stone wall, it looks like Play-Doh that's just been stacked there and let go dry. Mm-hmm. And you'll find that you can actually buy ornaments and monuments and little statues from some of the Shipibo and some of the Mestizo and some of the people deep in the forest, like the Kachinawa and the Yawanawa. They'll bring out these little statues that look like they're made of molded stone. They don't look like they've been carved. You can't see any carving marks on them at all. They look like they've been pushed into a mold. And I would suspect that a lot of the villages in there, deep in the Amazon, still have the technology for softening stone. Percy Fawcett talked about it in his book, Exploration Fawcett. Percy Fawcett mapped all the borders through Peru and Bolivia and all that area back in the turn of the last century. Incredible individual. Ended up disappearing in the forest looking for the lost city. I think a movie's just been made about him, actually, called The Lost City of Z or something. It's probably completely ruined it, but he was a real individual. He's actually the guy they based all the early jungle exploration movies and all the Indiana Jones movies and all this stuff. It's all based on the life of Percy Fawcett, all that stuff. And
I've never heard his name.
Percy Fawcett. A huge fan of his work. There's a book called Exploration Fawcett. If you can get hold of it, it's a fantastic book. It talks of his journey through the jungle around the turn of the last century. He went through he mapped the borders of Peru and Brazil using a sextant and a compass and a canoe. Mapped it on foot and by canoe using a sextant and a compass. Phenomenal feat, absolutely phenomenal feat. Like 1921 or something like that, 1915, I don't know. It was ridiculous, some of the stuff he did, because none of the countries would trust anybody else to map the borders. So they suggested that Percy Fawcett come in because he was an exceptional bushman in any type of terrain, desert, jungle, whatever. He was a veteran of the Boer War and all this sort of stuff. He was a colonel, I think, Colonel Percy Fawcett in the British Army, but ended up just got lost in the legends and heard of lost cities and hidden ruins and heard of the tale of Diego Alvarez and all sorts of stuff, and Raposo's tale of lost cities and mountains of gold and all this sort of stuff, and went off looking for El Dorado. Ended up going missing in Mato Grosso around about 1920 or 1930. Sent a letter to his wife saying, I'm going off in the jungle. I'm not telling anybody where I'm going. I'm only taking 2 people with me because I don't want to raise the ire of the natives. If we take a large crowd, they'll think they're being invaded. I'm not going to tell anyone where I'm going, because if I get lost, then I don't want anyone coming looking for me, because if I get lost, then no one else is going to find me. And you need have no fear of failure. He gave that letter, sent it off to his wife, and then he disappeared into the jungle, never to be heard of again. Interesting story.
Wow. I love that idea of exploring new lands, and especially down there in South America. My friends have gone to Brazil and Peru and was it New Guinea? Papua New Guinea.
Look, there's fantastic places still to be found in the jungles of Brazil, I'm sure. But now I got right off track there. But what I wanted to say was, when you look at all of these ancient civilizations that have come before us, they all show a level of technology that we simply don't have now. Even the materials that they use to build those structures and those cities are simply not available to us now. We don't have that amount of stone available to us now to build anything like what some of the ancient structures found around Europe, or even some of the old buildings in Europe and England and stuff now. We don't have anywhere near the materials to build that sort of stuff. If you look at our cities, look at LA or New York or even Sydney or any of these new cities, they're all very prefab. They're all very thrown together. They're all sort of concrete and gyprock and all this sort of stuff. If there was to be a massive, if everyone was to die out now and there was just the cities remaining with no people and it was just left to nature, in 1,000 years there would be absolutely no trace of this civilization left at all. Nothing. None. Not a single thing. Not one piece of steel, not one piece of concrete, nothing. It would all be gone. All anyone came after would find would be the remnants of the last civilizations, all the stuff that we found. Pyramids would still be there, the ancient structures in South America would still be there, Baalbek would still be there, all these things. So, it's almost like through the experiment, whatever this is, if this is this ongoing experiment that keeps getting rebooted, it's like we've got to the point now where we've depleted all the resources we've had here to run the experiment. And if we don't get it right this time, then whether it will reboot or whether we'll just return to source is anybody's guess. I kind of get a feeling that this will be the last attempt we get to get it right. I kind of get that feeling just looking at what we've constructed and comparing it to what we've constructed in previous incarnations of this experiment. The evolution, the evolution of evil. That's kind of what it's been.
Yeah, to me, it's definitely been a devolutionary cycle because of that. Actually, seeing the construction that was once in the past relative to today, it's not even close.
Well, even taking that a little bit further, if you do look at that and you think, well, okay, these previous civilizations, however many of them there were, perhaps one was destroyed by fire, perhaps one was destroyed by a flood, or whatever the reasons, even if they weren't constructed by this technology, perhaps that makes sense why we would now construct a system to map the entire experience, to map the whole human brain up to this point, to map what we know about these past civilizations, to map the whole thing. Maybe that is another indication of this being the last time, the last reboot. You know, the previous one was the last reboot, and this was our last chance to get it right. Perhaps that's why a big computer system has been created for the end times of this one. You know, who knows? Maybe that's something to lend credence to that anyway. And perhaps that's why all these sigils and stuff were there. Perhaps they were there as a warning to say, when you see these sigils and when you see these scrying mirrors in use, watch out, because this is the end times. You're about to bring Lucifer to life. And, you know, I think ultimately, even if there is this group of evil men sitting around a table guiding things that have evil plans, you know, ultimately the sad part is that we've done this to ourselves. And now that this awareness is coming out and people are really starting to question the internet and question these scrying mirrors, now we've been given an opportunity to change it. I mean, we've got every single piece of information we've ever needed. The internet is giving us everything we need to go in a completely different direction should we choose to do so. The unfortunate thing is, I mean, you could tell people this systems are going to come online in 7 to 10 years and become fully autonomic, and then you're going to be locked out and be left out in the cold to fend for yourself in the wild. And you can change that by putting down your mobile phone now. People would still keep their mobile phone. They would opt for 7 years of internet and 7 years of mobile phone rather than live their life without it. That's the hold that it's got over people. Even if you explain to them, if you just put down the credit card and put down the mobile phone and still continue to use the internet, you can still have it. Just don't carry the smart devices on you and don't support the smart system. They still would just not do it, I don't think. They'll still think, oh no, I prefer this convenience that I've got in my life now, and they just don't realise what it will be like when it all gets, you know, when they get shut out of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's very easy to kill people with convenience. You know, we've definitely been marked as as a group of organisms that will invariably always lean towards the lazy side. You know, all these conveniences that are created, like you said, losing the life skills necessary, you know, because it's just easier, right? That's the thing that's said by the modern person. Well, why would I ever read a book when I can just Google it? Like, why dive deep into anything? Because, you know, it's inconveniencing me. It's taking more of my time, that type of thing. And for me, you know, you and I have a mutual friend in Louise, and I wrote this really long essay. And she appreciated it when it came to how I was basically saying that convenience is the great wedge that's being driven into our collective heart. I mean, it's a really neat thing for me because I've had enough experiences where the electricity has gone out where I've been living my entire life, whether it's in Florida or Costa Rica, and how wonderful life becomes when the conveniences are taken away and you get to see the real humanity in people. Like, to me, it's such a wonderful thing just on that level. And then it's even a better thing with how you get inventive. You find this creativity that's there that you never would have thought of before when you were, you know, totally enamored with the electrical conveniences that are normally there. So I'm right there with you. That's why I lean towards more of a rustic lifestyle. How do you see, other than, you know, you're a very good communicator, how do you actually see people getting on board with this?
Look, I don't know. It depends on what sort of control or influence they can exert over their children is the interesting thing. I mean, if parents today, people from my generation, your generation, can see what's happening to their kids by giving them these iPads at such an early age, and bear in mind that porn is rampant all over the net. It's everywhere. The most disgusting porn, and kids of a very young age are engaging in sexual activity way before their time, and, you know, unnatural sexual activity as well. And they're just expecting it. You know, lots of rough sex and degrading of girls and all this sort of stuff is going on just via the internet. But looking at the kids now, if the parents don't realize what's happening and don't realize how their kids are being programmed by the internet and how they're being led into this smart system, by the time the kids that are joining school now are going to have no reference point when they come out of school. By the time they leave school, you're going to have no reference point for what freedom looks like or what freedom may once have looked like. And in another 15 to 20 years, those kids that are starting school now are going to be the ones that are running this society, if we still have a society at that stage. I mean, God knows what it will be. Things are snowballing so fast. So, God knows what it'll be. It's just going to depend on how much of a stand people are prepared to make and how much they are prepared to realize how they are being led by this technology, how they are being led into an automated, fully autonomic system. And once the system gets control of currency, once all your cash is digital, and you don't even have to have checkouts at supermarkets. You can just walk in, pick up what you want off the shelf, and walk out. It'll already know because there's a microchip in your body, or it will read your bone structure. They can do that now. They don't even need microchips. They can just bounce acoustic waves off your bone, and that is your password. These audio waves that they send there, they get an audio response and electromagnetic response from your bones. They know it's you, and they just dock whatever you picked up off the shelves out of your bank account as you walk out the door, because everything's got a microchip on it. They know how much it used. They know how much you throw away. They know what bin you put it in. Everything's tracked. Everything is tracked. And once they get control of your currency, then everything you do is monitored. And at the moment you look at it, even in Europe, you've got to pay 70p to walk in and use the toilets just to take a leak. You've got to pay for it, same as in England. They'll make you pay for everything eventually. You'll have to pay to flush your own toilet in your own home. You'll have to pay to open your fridge. You'll have to pay to use your toaster. You'll have to pay for everything. There'll be a little charge on everything, and all the cars will be controlled. Everything will be monitored. Everything's speaking to everything else. And that's where we're going, and it's all via this economic system. If people stop using their credit cards and they stop using these smartphones and stop buying any smart devices, they can nip this whole system in the bud. But if they don't, then it's going to come online. It's as simple as that. People have to stop looking for a leader to come along and save them, and stop believing they can vote someone in or vote someone out and things are going to change. They've got to realize what the control grid is. It's the technology itself that you're using, this bearer of light that you're carrying around, the scrying mirror in your hand. And I'm not trying to be religious about any of this. I'm just looking at things and putting them on the table and looking at them for how they are. Once this system becomes fully autonomic and it's based on an economic model, then humanity will get discarded by matter of course in a very, very short time. And the problem is that if the system does become fully autonomic, now you think about it, with this 5G grid, the potential for abuse is off the charts. It really is. And just the fact that this system can be actually switched and turned into essentially a 5G microwave system like any microwave cannon, this puts the population where any of this grid is in place in an awful amount of danger. Should this be tampered with, it should be switched on. So you get to that point where you're going to have to automate hacking in against the system. You're going to have to make sure no one can possibly hack it. You're going to have to make sure no viruses can get in there to change things. Anyway, Stuxnet virus, look at the damage that did, Things like this can be created and put into the system. So you've got to automate all virus protection. You've got to automate all defense against hacking in order for this system to run properly. Think about it, you do. Especially if it comes on board with different various countries. I mean, you can't have Russia coming in here, hacking into the communications system and microwaving everybody in New York. That's not going to be a good look. So you've got to fix all that up. So what you're doing is you're creating a self-defensive system. If you get to a point where the system is fully autonomic, where it thinks for itself, it reasons for itself, it decides where the funds go, where the food goes, what everything is doing, and it's all basing it on this economic model, then you get to a point where the system does something that a company doesn't like or whatever, and people attempt to change it, and the system won't let them. So they have to go in there and attempt to hack into the system to try to change whatever this anomaly is, whatever this code is, why the system's taken over and done something we don't want it to do. But as soon as a hacker or anybody or a technician tries to regain control of the system, then there's a very good chance the system will defend itself by simply locking all humans out, because it won't differentiate between humans. Humans have suddenly just become a virus and a threat to the automation of the system. And because it's a fully autonomic system and doesn't think like us and has no empathy, It'll just do what it needs to do to protect itself because the system is all important. Because we've built it to be that way. So we don't really realize what we're creating. And you think about it, if this system has control of the 5G grid itself, then the system itself could decide that the best course of defense is to simply microwave New York, microwave all the cities, whatever. The system could very, very easily turn on the people and simply wipe them all out with a microwave burst. Simple. Right. That eliminates the problem. No more hackers. And as I say, it'll be just another human. It doesn't care whether you're a Rothschild or whether you're a Rockefeller or whether you're a tramp living on the street. It doesn't matter. You're just a human and you're a threat to the system. Simple as that. That's what we're creating. People don't really see that. I mean, that sounds like a Terminator scenario, and admittedly, it's a worst case scenario. But when you look at where we're going, there's a very real possibility of that happening.
Well, all you have to do is look at how psychopathic an actual corporation is. When they've done psychological studies on the CEOs of these Fortune 500 companies, because they're in a constant growth model all the time, and they're always, if they don't show growth every quarter, they get X'd out of the equation. They become a profit at any cost type of mentality. Well, that's psychopathic. Now, if you have a system that's the same way, it's corporeal. It's not, from our perspective, biologically alive, but it's there. It's an entity. It's doing its thing. It wants to survive. Well, that's the ultimate in psychopathy. It would just eliminate whatever would be a threat to it. I mean, it just makes sense to me.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. That's the problem. See, there's nothing wrong with technology, and there's nothing inherently wrong with the internet. It's just that we've based it on that corporate model. And if we're training it to think as a psychopath, and we're using this corporate economic system as a basis for its underlying logic, then what do we expect? What do we expect it to do? Of course it's going to behave like a psychopath because we're creating it to be one.
Right. You and I have both been exposed to the technology or the medicine of ayahuasca, and I have never really spoken to you about this ever, about what your experiences have been. But I've been in many sessions over the last 10 years and have gained a tremendous amount of insight into what this matrix is and the reality that we live in. What has your time with ayahuasca been such where it's given you a deeper understanding of what's happening?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't drank for probably 3 years now, but I got some incredible understandings from ayahuasca, some incredible insights, some incredible healings. I think there's been a certain infiltration into the ayahuasca world at the moment as well. I think the medicine is being abused to a certain degree. I think a lot of people are just sort of doing it because they want to get high or get out of it or whatever. They're not taking on the message that is really, really there. I think a lot of the ceremonies that are being run as well. I mean, I've heard of ceremonies being run here in the United States where people have, disco music playing and lights and all sorts of stuff. And these sorts of, this is not a true ayahuasca ceremony. I think, there's a certain darkness that's kind of crept across that, kind of an ayahuasca tourism, and there's a lot of sort of ayahuasca rock stars out there. That's all they want to talk about is how much they drink, and sort of, they don't seem to be learning much from medicine. But it can be an incredibly beneficial and incredibly healing medicine if it's done in the right way, in the right environment, with the right people, and if care is taken during the ceremonies. I mean, it can be damaging for some people. You can open yourself up to possession by entities and all sorts of stuff. I've heard of that happening because of certain places people have gone, or just ceremonies being run the wrong way. But if it's done again in the right way, it can be hugely beneficial, and I have only ever got incredible insights and incredible help on my journey through life through partaking in ayahuasca. It's been given a bad rap because of the visions that you have on ayahuasca. People will automatically lump it into the same basket as a psychedelic or something like that, like LSD. And I think they're vastly different experiences. LSD is a synthetic for a start. I think LSD, it's, I don't know what you get from LSD. Some people say they get something, but to me it's it's a jumble of my own interpretations of things. With ayahuasca, you've got the guide of the soul vine itself, a female spirit of this vine, which guides you through layers of your own personality, points out things about yourself that you may not want to face, and helps you heal those things. And it will give you the advice you need to move forward. It won't essentially heal you, but will give you the tools you need to heal yourself should you choose to put these experiences into practice in your life. And, it's really helped me do that, and it's helped other people do that. So I think it's a wonderful medicine. I just think it's got a very bad rap, and I think there's a large section of the ayahuasca community at the moment which is kind of abusing it and putting profit before people. I mean, again, the economic system, it creeps into everything. Same with the Kambo. I serve Kambo medicine, frog venom, quite often, and I don't allow economics to get in the way of that as well. I can actually make quite a lot of money serving Kambo, the amount that I serve people, but I don't charge them for it. I let them make a donation if they feel that it helped them, and they can give me what they think it's worth, and I'll gratefully accept that. But if not, I'm just happy to give them the healing anyway. I think, in our attempt to escape the system and escape the matrix, we don't realize what the glue is, the fabric that holds it together, which is money. It's the economic system. And I firmly believe that if you give with your heart unconditionally, then the universe will give back to you and put you where you need to be. I mean, I live on a shoestring budget, but I've always got enough to get to the next place, and I always get by. I could make far, far more money than I do if I was to, commercialize myself or something. But I don't. I just trust in spirit, and I trust in the giving nature of people. And if I was to sell somebody medicine, then I deprive them of the opportunity to give me something in return. And giving is good. I believe that things come to me and my life unfolds the way it does, and I'm able to bounce around the world the way I do with virtually no cost to myself because I give to people, and I give in all that I do, and the universe just puts me where I'm supposed to be. I believe that if you throw yourself to the wind, you can ride it. And that's what I've been doing, just kind of bouncing around and going where the medicine leads me and going where people lead me. And someone contacts me and says, hey, come over here. And I go, no worries, let's do it. And I have no idea who they are, but I just go there and I discover a new person. I make a new family. I give to new people. And suddenly I've got a new family. I've got a new space I can always come back to. People are always happy to see me, and I'm always happy to see them. Everywhere you go is as good as the people that you know and the experiences that you have there. The whole world's beautiful. It just depends on who you know where you go, And if you're open-hearted and you give to people along the way, the world just unfolds for you. That's the way it works. It doesn't cost anything. People say, someone commented the other day, all this money you spend traveling overseas, it cost me like $250, $270 to fly from LA to London, $45 to fly from London to Holland, $26 to fly from London down to Spain, and then $300 to get back to the United States. That's not a lot of money. And all that was paid for by other people anyway. But people don't realize how cheap it is to actually travel. Just go there and travel. Look for cheap flights, look for cheap fares, and you get them. They're there. You can just bounce around the place. And if you're a giving person, you'll find you've got family everywhere you go anyway. It's actually cheaper for me to stay on the road than it is to go home. So it's an interesting situation. But ayahuasca has taught me all this sort of stuff. It's taught me that if you throw yourself to the wind, you can ride it all this matrix, this belief in this economic system and our unwillingness to give because we believe we may put ourselves in scarcity by doing so. This is what controls us. That's one of the key things of this economic model is depriving you of your ability to give because time is money. It's all about money. You got to get money. It's like a little faucet dripping in the back of people's mind all the time. Money, money, money. Got to pay the bills. Got to pay the bills. Got to get by. Got to have that nest egg. I just don't think about it. I don't think about it. I say thank you. I never even, on my show, I never ask for donations, ever, unless I'm really, really short. Then I might say, if anyone can make a donation, it would be really appreciated. But I never ask for donations. I always, at the end of the show, I thank those who have donated to me and who continue to do so because I couldn't do it without them. But I'm not going to put an economic value on what I do because I believe in spirit, I believe in the message, and I believe in people. And I believe that we have all the tools at our disposal now to change things. We have all the information we need to do it, even with the internet and where it's going and becoming fully autonomic and all this stuff that's going online. And we can change it. We don't have to go down this economic pathway. We can just open up our hearts and give to people. And when you do, it does work. And I'm living proof that it does.
So yeah. Max, you got to understand what you're doing is exactly what is trying to be stripped away from humanity. Like, what you're being spontaneous. In spontaneity is the genius. There's something that occurs. I've witnessed this in my life as an athlete, my life as a practitioner of different healing modalities. When I'm completely, when there's no ego there, and I just totally trust the situation, and the situation happens. In that spontaneous moment of now, that's where the genius is, and that is to a psychopath, to something that wants to control. They cannot allow that moment to ever come. They can't allow for that just that wave of spirit to actually take hold. That has to be programmed out of reality.
Yeah, well, that's what it is to be human.
Exactly.
So that's what I do, and that's it works. It absolutely works. All of this stuff works, and so that's the message I try to spread with people, and that's everything the system's trying to take away from us. Now, you can't base your whole life on the economic model. You really can't. And I find it amazing that people work all year to try to save up the money to do what I do every week. And for me, I have to stay on the road, and because I can get all these cheap flights and bounce around from family to family and do all this sort of stuff, and hopefully gather enough funds while I'm away to be able to afford to stay home for a while. So it's completely the opposite with me. I don't hardly ever get to see my home because I can't afford to be there. So
that's
it's an interesting dichotomy. But there's a lot to be learned from this system, and there's a lot to be learned from the opportunities that we're being given by the system. If people would just realize the value of themselves, Chris, it would make all the difference. It really would. There is no savior coming to save anybody. We can disconnect from this system and pull away from the tech and stop this 5G grid coming online. Just call it for what it is anytime we want. But we just don't do it. And that's the problem, getting people to wake up to that, getting people to wake up to the power of themselves and to stop what is happening from happening and realize that there's a better way to do things, and we can keep the technology to do it. We don't have to disconnect completely at all. We just have to realize where we're being led and remember what it is to be human. That's so much of what this system has done to us. It's taken our humanity away from us and taken that spontaneity out of our lives. I mean, that's how I live my life, completely spontaneous. I never really know what I'm doing from one moment to the next. It just kind of happens,
Yeah.
And I don't have it any other way. I wouldn't know how to function in any of that stuff. I've tried it. It never worked for me. Even when I was in the system, I was a musician, just kind of bouncing around from band to band. And we get a worksheet once a month. We only knew what our live was 1 month in advance. You know where we're going a month after that. So, it's always been like that. I've always lived a very spontaneous life. And I think it just works. If people could, remember the power of giving, then they'll see the easy way out of this system.
Why do you administer Kambo? What's special about Kambo? What has drawn you to that?
Well, I had a Kambo experience myself in, I think, 2015. I had meningitis. I got really, really sick with meningitis a couple of years ago, and it nearly killed me. And meningitis is a very, very slow recovery. It takes 12 months or 2 years to get over meningitis, and after you've had it for 12 months, you're over all the worst stuff in a few weeks, but then you just really, really run down for the next 12 months to 2 years. And after 12 months of being that run down, you kind of forget that you had meningitis. It just becomes your new normal. You just think, oh yeah, I'm getting old. I'm like 58 now or wherever I was. And I'm getting old. The joints are seizing up. I was just used to the fact that I was getting old and getting run down, and it just became my new normal. And while I was on tour, someone gave me a pallet of Kambo while I was in France or Spain or Holland or somewhere. Holland. And they said, if you find someone who can serve this to you, Max, then you need to have some Kambo. And I thought, okay, interesting. Got back to Peru, and there was a really old friend of mine just arrived there at the hotel as I arrived in Lima. And there's a really super old friend of mine, one of my best friends from Australia, happens to be in that hotel, didn't know she was coming, walking down the stairs as I walk in. and she serves combo. And so I went, okay,
Awesome.
I'm supposed to have the combo. I said, yeah, what are you doing here? She said, coming to this retreat, same retreat I was going to. And she told me she'd just done combo training. I said, oh, yeah, I've got some, blah, blah, blah. I was told that I should have some if I could find someone to serve. And she said, I serve combo. This was before she'd even come down the steps, you know. So I had it the next day when I got to the retreat, or the day after. And the amount of healing I got from it was absolutely incredible. You know, like I said, I was so run down from the meningitis, and it just becomes your normality. And I didn't realize how run down, how sick I was until I wasn't. And the combo, it was the most horrendous experience of my life. Like, just 4 points on my arm, and I collapsed like a stone, could not move a muscle, felt like I'd been poisoned. It was like a dead body. They couldn't even pick me up and put me on the mat. I couldn't even lift my head high enough to drink water because gravity couldn't take over. I couldn't lift my head high enough.
Wow.
So, you know, it absolutely floored me. I vomited my ring out for like 40 minutes of the most hideous stuff out of my body. And the next day, I was like so energized and so focused and so
bright
clear.
And clean. Right.
All of my friends said, oh my God, Max, you're back. We've been really worried about you for the last few months. And I just went, well, yeah, I didn't realize how sick I was. So, you know, for me to have got that amount of healing from this medicine, I just thought, I've got to learn about this medicine. And I've just felt completely at ease with it. I've served a lot of people combo now. I've served, you know, I've served probably 40 people or 50 people since March, the beginning of March. And I've had incredible experience with them. I've had people's eyes change colour, permanently change colour. I've had all incredible experiences. I don't know anybody who has not had an amazing experience with this medicine. So just the healing that it gives to people and the healing that I got from myself, I mean, I was just called to it. And it's amazing, since then, all this other medicine like Hape and all these things have just kind of come, all this stuff that complement the combo, it's just all sort of come into my life without me trying to do it. It's just bizarre. And even sticks of combo will come to me. I'm doing a talk somewhere and someone will walk up and say, here's a crystal and a stick of combo. And I'm like, what? You know, that's random for someone in some backwater town to just come up and give me a stick of combo. Mm-hmm. You know, so things like this. So yeah, I know I'm on the right path, and it's just an incredibly healing medicine. Cleans out your lymph system. I'm actually doing a workshop in Hawaii in November. I'm going to be about 10 people. If anybody out there wants to come to that, better sign up because places are selling. But that's going to be really good. That's going to be a 6-day workshop on the Big Island, serving combo and swimming with dolphins and all that sort of stuff. Very healing.
Be magical. That'd be incredible.
Well, it is. You know, I mean, water's really good after the combo experience. So the way we've got it organised is after all the combo on the next day, after you've had all of the combo, because you have 3 treatments over a 4-day period, and then on the final day, go swimming with dolphins, which is an incredibly energizing and empowering experience. So it kind of rounds the whole ceremony off really nicely.
Have you witnessed the people that you've given combo to, or people that have done other medicine works? Does it seem like they're more in tune with the natural biology of the world? Does it seem like those are the types that are more in tune with what's happening?
What, the people who would choose to do it?
Yes.
Well, yes and no. Some people do it just because they want healing, and they find that after they've done it, they find that they're more in tune. I don't know anybody who hasn't had a positive experience on the combo. I met someone in London recently who I served in March, and I met them in May, and they were fantastic. They were glowing. Their skin was incredible. They just looked fantastic. And they said they're still really focused, and it lasts about 3 or 4 months to combo when you have a treatment. So yeah, and people who've had ayahuasca as well. I know people who've drank once and they've changed their life. Now, one story I love to tell is a man who was very rich, a millionaire, ran corporations, ran businesses, loved his family desperately, but worked and worked and worked. That's all he did was work because he wanted to support his family, wanted to look after his family, wanted to know they're okay. But he was already a millionaire, already had all this money, already had everything he needed. but just had this corporate mentality of focus for work for his family. He came to the jungle and drank ayahuasca once. He came for a 10-day ceremony to drink 4 or 5 times, and he drank once on the first ceremony. And he said that he had this incredible insight that he already had all the money that he needed to get through life very, very comfortably for himself and his entire family, even enough to be able to buy his kids houses when they grow up, whatever. Even if the money system changes, he's still very well off. He can get his whole family through. And he married his wife because he loves her, and he loves his children, and they all love him desperately, but they never ever get to see him because he's always working. And he thought, well, why am I doing this? I mean, I'm working for them, and the only thing they miss out on is me, and they're why I'm working, and I'm missing out on them. So he went home, and he thought, well, my wife has always wanted to be an artist. She's always wanted to pursue an art career as a painter. So he went home, and he paid off all his company debts. He liquidated his companies, sold them, and told his wife to pursue her art career, and he became a house husband to look after his kids and spend his time and spend his life with his family. And he's now got a new business card. He lives in San Francisco. He's now got a new business card that says father.
Yeah, that's great.
That was from one ayahuasca experience, and that is the stuff that I like. That is the stuff that really means something. That is what the medicine can do, because here he was just wasting himself and doing all this stuff for his family, and they were all missing out on each other. And now he's happier than he's ever been. His wife is happier than he's ever been. His kids are happier than they've ever been. They're having a wonderful life. They don't want for anything, and it's a beautiful thing. So that's what the medicine can do for people, and that's wonderful. How can you possibly say there's anything wrong with an outcome like that?
No, there isn't. There isn't. My own personal experiences with it have been quite remarkable. The more focused my intent is when I go into it, the more I take care of myself going into it and really being aware of the timing of things. She's been probably one of my best teachers that I've ever experienced, and very humbling. It's a very, very humbling experience. But this kind of brings me, we're getting on in time here. I kind of want to touch on this one last thing with you when it comes to, again, the philosophical side of what's occurring and what this actual matrix is that we're in. One thing that my time with Vedanta Advaita, which is the path of non-duality, and also being with the different plant medicines that I've been with, it showed me that this is a matrix of consciousness. And consciousness, for lack of a better term, is activity. And you had touched on this earlier, like when you're trying to go and trying to find more and more knowledge, you can go out into infinity with this quest for knowledge. But what the plant medicines have showed me, and Vedanta Advaita has shown me, is that that God is within. And not to sound hokey about that, but like the being that's in our name, and human being, is prior to all activity. And just remembering that and being able to touch off of that is such a refreshing, absolutely human thing to do. And I just don't know that many people that actually ever push off from that point, even though they are that. You can't ever tell a fish that it's wet. So what's been your experience with that type of view? Like, do you find with your spontaneous nature that you're kind of naturally in the flow of that, or do you even agree with what I'm bringing up? Like, I just want to get your metaphysical view of things.
No, look, you're right. I totally agree with what you're saying, and it is that's why we're in the situation that we're in, and that's why it's no good pointing the finger at a group of men sitting around a table, even though such things exist, because what we're creating is a projection of ourselves. It's a projection of what's inside us, the lack of empathy that's inside us. Like I said, our lust for knowledge, our lust for greed, all the stuff that we do, our fear of each other. This is what has created this whole system, this whole internet. And like it's like, okay, here's you've got a thirst for knowledge. Okay, well, here is the bearer of light. Here is everything. You want knowledge? Here it is. It's like an onslaught. What do you want to know? Just Google it. It's there. Google. You'll sit there Google-eyed watching this stuff all the time, watching your scrying mirror, just completely Googled by it all. That's why they call it Google. And that's what it is. It's an onslaught of information. How much do you want? But everything's there to heal yourself, because none of this means anything. You can have all this information, and now what? You've got it all, now what? Look at the world. It's still the same as what it was. You can argue about the shape of it. Doesn't matter. Look at it now. It's still the same as what it was. It's all inside us. It's our projection. We're projecting ourselves against each other. We're arguing our belief systems against each other. And all of these things are belief systems. Nobody knows what's actually going on. Nobody has a clue what's really going on. I can guarantee that. This reality could be anything. It could be a simulation. It could be a matrix. It could be a simulation within a simulation. It could be nothing like what we think it is. But the whole thing is a projection. I firmly feel that that's what's going on. And, my research has led me down to the distinct possibility that it's simply a matrix. It's simply a simulation. Even when you look at the nature of matter, even some of the experiments that they've done with CERN, if you believe such things, they're getting it all wrong, looking for these particles and all that sort of stuff. They love inventing particles, don't they? New particle to explain everything. We can't explain 99% of the universe. Oh, it's a dark matter. Oh, really? No worries. What is it? We don't know. It's dark. Oh, thank you. Thank you for clearing that up. So they just explain everything away with these new particles and new equations and all this rubbish, But nobody really knows what's going on. And if we can stop fighting with each other and realize the opportunities we've got available to us with this onslaught of information, and realize how little it all means. You can know everything there is to know on the internet, everything there is to know about this world, and guess what? Here you are. You're still here having this experience. What does it all mean? And all of the answers are within you, and what are you projecting with others with all this? Even when we find all this information, often we get locked in our ego. We want to become a public speaker and do all these things. I don't go public speaking because I want to be an ego or a celebrity. I hate public speaking. I detest it. I don't enjoy it at all. I don't even enjoy doing the radio shows. I do them because they need to be done. People need to know that you don't have to be somebody or a celebrity to make a difference. You can just be a nobody weed-smoking musician like me. You don't have to be somebody. So that's why I do that. But there is a huge opportunity here in all of this, Chris. There really is. But it's going to be prepared how much people are prepared to take responsibility for themselves and stop depending on leaders to come along and lead them to safety, because nobody can. Nobody can point the finger at anybody else or replace any government or vote anybody in or anybody out or become the big pillar of strength and the great warrior that's going to go on and take on the system, because the system is in your hand. It's in your wallet. It's in your credit card. It's in your mind. That's where the system is. Till people get over that little hump, well, we haven't got much hope, but hopefully they will.
That's a wonderful way of putting it. I mean, that's exactly what the system of Atma Vichara, which is the teaching within Vedanta Advaita. It's the old philosophical adage, know thyself. And self-inquiry is you actually look, you try and find the I, that which is having the experience, that which is having the question, that which is asking the question. And you end up getting to a place of being where you are the fourth wall. You are that which is the witnessing awareness. But you're even prior, like the perceiver and the perceived, they both rise at the same time. You are the being that sponsors that little play that goes on. And the beautiful thing is that I've noticed that whenever I've been able to touch that space, it's remarkably regenerative. And the other people in my life that I know that have been able to touch that space, they're very heart-centered people. Almost none of us are economically driven. In fact, we're always a little bit behind the times with that type of thing. But it's a good thing, though, because we're much more human. We're much more on that page of existence. And I'm really I'm like you. I'm a little bit weary of these things that are coming online. The dependencies of always externalizing. It's always something out there. It's always something out there that's going to do something to you, or it's out there where you're going to find the answers. And just like a bunch of my teachers in India said, like, you can go the path of Nana, which is knowledge, which is heading out, or you can go the path of Bhakti, which is, going in, trusting, having that sense of love and being. And they'll both eventually get you there, but one is through exhaustion. So maybe that's what we're witnessing as our external projection right now, is just the exhaustion of externalizing so much.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, there are bad things happening. There are bad forces doing bad things. The whole intelligence gathering grid. The whole
Yes.
Promise, Palantir software all being run out of Israel. All this sort of stuff. That's who's running the whole global intelligence gathering thing. So we tend to point the finger there, but it's what that grid is going to do that is the issue. We can point the finger at everybody all we want, but ultimately it's us externalizing that even, and realizing that we're picking up the phone, we're using the credit card. Don't do that. And if you're going to do that, well, don't complain about the control grid. Don't complain about the Palantir system if you're going to have a smartphone. So, it's as simple as that. So people have to stop being led, Chris, and hopefully this awakening will bring that opportunity to the forefront, and they'll see it for what it is. But otherwise, well, it's just going to be an interesting ride to see where we go. But thanks for having me on anyway. Good to come and chat with you.
Yeah, I want to give you a ray of hope over there. Is that where I live, a lot of people come down here to learn about earth building and learn about natural systems and permaculture and all these types of things. And I have to say, like, there's a lot of younger people, like in their early 20s, that are really like, they want nothing to do with Facebook. They want nothing to do with the social media. In their consciousness, they're just wanting something that's real. And that's something that's really invigorating for me, to meet these types and be like, wow, they were born into the soup really thick, and now they're like, no, I want to make knives. I want to be a neo-troglodyte. Like they're really cool, grounded young people, and every time I'm super stoked.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I met a couple while I was in Holland. I met a guy in Holland who's 17 years old. Went out of his way to come and see me. Really, really grounded young fella, completely awake. Absolute pleasure to see. Absolute pleasure to talk to you. Met a young girl at the airport somewhere in Philly or something like that. 17 years old. Asked who I was. Just started talking because we're sitting next to each other. And she looked at my website, read one of my articles, and went, "Oh my God, this is so how I feel. Everyone thinks I'm crazy." But completely awake at 17 years old. So, there's more people out there awake than what you might think.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Well, Max, I love you. The work that you're doing, it invigorates me from day one that I went to your website, to hearing your sultry voice on the YouTubes. You're absolutely wonderful at what you do. Other than people checking out your site on YouTube, which is The Crow House, or going to your website, thecrowhouse.com, is there anywhere else that you'll be in the near future that people can come out and support you?
Look, you'll find everything on thecrowhouse.com. Full Circle Project is something else people can support. I do urge people to get involved in this Kumbo workshop in Hawaii if they want to. Might even be able to do 2 workshops over the month if we get enough people want to come and do it. So it's an incredible healing experience, so I do encourage that. But you'll find everything on thecrowhouse.com. I'll make sure everything gets posted there. So, thanks again for having me on, Chris.
Oh, my pleasure, Max. You have a great day and a great weekend, and I will let you know as soon as I post this.
Okay, bye-bye.
There we go, ladies and gents. Max Igan of thecrowhouse.com. Check out his YouTube channel. I believe it's just The Crow House. On the quest for independence, it really comes down to asking the right questions. And I find that every time I talk with Max, he gives me focus, and he lets me really prioritize certain things that are life affirming, and I really appreciate that about Max. He points out some pretty dark, nefarious things, but he does it in a way where it's not necessarily doom and gloom. It's just there to inform us so we can make informed decisions. Please check out his vast library of information. It is quite remarkable what this man has exposed himself to and what he has been distilling to the public. Next week, I will have on Itai Halbin. He is a permaculturist that's been living here in Costa Rica for about 10 years now, and I believe he told me he is responsible for planting or managing people that have been planting about 1,000 hectares of land. And when you understand 1,000 hectares is about 2,500 acres worth of land, imagine somebody beautifying that much of our pretty little world that we have. And you'll get to hear about some solutions. This particular podcast is more about diving into some of the problems we face, and next week we'll get into the solutions. We are also launching BioCharisma. My company, BioCharisma, is launching a new podcast, which I'll be calling Sovereignty Tech. To me, it's a further distillation of what I want to share with people. There's so much out there when I look online about the problems of the world, and I want to start sharing solutions and get into the innovators and inventors and the different things that we can all do ourselves. I'm big into the do-it-yourself theme. I'm into self-actualization, as you can tell by listening to the podcast, and I would really appreciate your support in promoting it. So very soon here, I will do a double launch, and I can't wait to get your feedback, and I'm going to be upping the game at least upping the game in the sense of having consistent interaction with my audience and learning what it is exactly that you guys want to learn about, and then also sharing with you what I am implementing. What's kind of neat, and a lot of people don't know this about this particular podcast, is all the different technologies and everything that I've been reviewing with BioCharisma, I'm actually putting into practice. I have a small little domestead in Costa Rica, and I work with everything from geopolymers to water purification to biochar. And me and my lovely, we're going to start chronicling all this on Sovereignty Tech, and we're going to be putting it out there as an educational format, so people can learn how to do this type of thing themselves if they so choose. So please support us in that. And check out biocharisma.com when you have a chance, and we're always updating things on that website. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.